Hello, welcome back to the Tabletop Discussion, where I have Sam and Alex. Welcome back, Sam.
Hello.
It's been a hot minute. I think it's been like 2-3 weeks since we last had you on.
Yeah, and since then I have gotten a bit of a head cold.
Oh, bless.
To be honest, it could be because I've had about 2.5 hours of sleep today.
Oh,
Jeez.
wrap you up in a blanket. You didn't. Oh, you could have said. I could have.
But that was
Just like a
that was,
lullaby.
that was about 10 hours ago before I had to go to work, so we'll forget about that.
So you know what I'm hearing is if you aren't as argumentative,
Or if I say something incredibly just horrible against
Blame it on the cold.
blame it on the cold. If I begin to sound like I'm the bad guy,
don't worry,
blame it on the head
I've got
cold.
the mute button ready just in case.
Also, that is not true because everybody, these two were arguing
Yes.
while I was getting ready, like for a good half hour about archetypes. So, and it was intense.
It was
and very
one-
awkward.
One specific, really small thing as well. Like that I also admit that
I won't. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
Other archetypes.
Let's
Easier
talk
to define
Let's talk
archetypes.
about archetypes. So what we're really talking about specifically is not necessarily stereotypes, but we're actually talking about the archetypes, the main skeletal structure of particular concepts such as characters, even potentially DMs and DM styles, and maybe even campaign settings. One particular thing that I've actually put up on here is a picture of Adrian's artwork of them being in paladin mode next to artwork of what I could find as a paladin. Mostly because that the archetype is a knight, paladin, warrior of a kingdom, well, queendom. But I think we've also talked about this as well, because basically your archetype, technically also we said this, if we were to talk about your archetype, it's kind of like better to explain it as a D&D class. And your D&D class would probably more than likely be paladin.
Because
Because you're strong and
strong.
pure.
I have a code of ethics.
Exactly.
follow.
You have a code
And
of ethics.
soon enough, I'll be given power by an entity, much like most paladins.
Way to spoil it, Sam.
Well,
Well, you haven't actually said. You haven't actually said.
Have I not?
So, no,
Well,
but don't say it.
I mean-
Don't say it.
to be fair, for the zero
Spoil.
people that have watched our campaigns the last 3 months, I doubt they'll be so disappointed.
I think we've had a few people watch it, but yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Like no more than 10 views ever.
I will say this as well. Just calling out Sam here as the leaky spoiler man, because you were just gonna spoil me on your own campaign not even a day ago. You're just like, do you want me to tell you what the truth about this? And I was like, no.
I mean, to be fair, it was just a very minor thing which you'd asked me about.
But even so, I said, like, you said specifically, so you will find out when you get to a certain level. When you get to level 10, and I'm like, ooh, okay. And to me, it is kind of a big deal, like what the context is. And you were like, do you want me to tell you? And I was like, no, I want to unlock it at level 10.
I want to do
Ah.
it.
Well, have patience, damn it.
Yeah, I will. Well, that's the thing. You say have patience, but you don't have patience. You're just sort of
I
like,
don't.
You don't know.
I never said I did.
So
Well, okay, fair enough.
so damn it.
On the head cold.
It's kind of interesting because that's not the first I mean, that sort of goes more into the stereotypes of DMs trying so hard not to spoil and eventually accidentally leaking out all of their information. But one particular thing that I know I'm definitely an archetype in the terms of campaigns is I'm very combative. as a DM. A couple of reasons are for this. I grew up pretty much on Dragon Ball Z, Digimon, and One Piece. And then over time, I further expanded my my repertoire of more combat-based things. I enjoy Dark Souls, Elden Ring. I enjoy all sorts of different other particular combat-based games, God of War, stuff like that. So when it comes down to it, I very much like getting into the meat and bones and everything of just the concept of combat. That is not only my bread and butter, but also my peanut butter and jelly. It's everything. It's the whole sandwich. I love combat in games because I feel like it is the main part of the challenge. I'm also not great at making puzzles. So I usually come up with trying to make characters that have abilities that are relatively some kind of a puzzle, which, to be fair, when you leave the current island that you're on, it will be less about willpower again, and it will go more into the concept of it. But theoretically, I might have tainted you by that point, because most of you might have learnt a willpower technique, which completely removes that whole possibility. But yes, my archetype is the combat-based DM. I do like roleplay stuff. I do really enjoy character moments. As a matter of fact, I was talking to Bill, and then I was talking to... Funny enough, I think I was talking to you about this a few days ago, Alex, and obviously at Sam, but at one point this week I was talking to you about it, Sam, as well. I always want to get more information, especially after the most recent situation that we had. I always want to get more information, not only for me, but also from me to the players, so that then there's no more weird surprises. But even if there is a surprise, it's something that has been not necessarily spoiled, but at least potentially based on the stuff that we've already discussed. But yes, no, I would say if I was to put myself into an archetype, it would be the combat-based DM. It also doesn't help that one of the biggest things that we're trying to sort out for this game is the combat at the moment. So I made an entire campaign based on combat.
I mean, that's fair, to be honest. We're coming to... I must say, it has been kind of I guess it's kind of odd for Sam, because Sam is very much the no combat, I'll do it, screw it, I'll do it a different way sort of player, and DM. Because, not that he doesn't have combat in his games, but he does, it is very much sort of we're doing some weird shit. Instead of the combat.
I think most of the games I've mostly done is just kind of I'd let you kind of dictate what you want me to do. Most of the time, I mostly just let you talk and chat with each other until either you stop speaking, or you kind of get to the point you want to talk to someone else.
It has led to some really odd moments, to be honest.
But they're very in character moments.
Yeah, I would like to think so. Yeah, it's just I must say it has been sort of I definitely do see the differences in your GM styles, because I think that especially with the latest thing, with Joe, it's finding all of these, all of the information, and having an encounter prepared for every occasion. And it's oh, you've gone here, you have unlocked the DLC for this character. You just it is now free. Whereas Sam is very much sort of I don't know.
To be fair,
I don't go like that.
No, you know what I mean. You're more sort of you're yeah, let's just go sit out in the grass and do the session outside kind of DM.
I just I allow you to do your own things. If you want to talk to the wizard or burn him alive, that's your own prerogative.
So I have a question for you, Sam, as a DM.
Yes.
One particular question that I have is when you're doing your campaign, how much is improv and how much is actually pre-written stuff? Do you say, for instance, if they want to talk to Bob the Rando, who you didn't anticipate for, are you actually anticipating for this, or is it actually a character you've pre-made anyway and pre-built and understand roughly what they would do and say in that situation?
I have made a few characters that are built that I know of. Some of them need to be built on the moment. A lot of them need to be built in the moment. But there are like general archetypes I'll give them. Like I have just had a lot of because of the time period they're in, and just because it'd be quite cute and funny. I have a lot of children just kind of be there to have fun with them, like to do like kid games. Like one of the characters, because of the way my game is, they went backwards in time. One of the characters invented I Spy and Tag, and invented like the slushy, various other things, which I had not planned for. I had not anticipated, but I've allowed them to do it just because it sounded kind of funny, and that would amuse the children that are annoying them. Like quite recently, they kind of forced a character upon me. I made a mother character that had because they needed like children's clothing for this other character who I had made. They just kind of went to this group and said, "Hey, do you have clothes?" Like, "Hey, yeah," just made a character on the spot.
So you do remind me a lot about the stuff that I previously did, like a few years ago. So when I first started DMing, I tried to plan as much as I could, and then improvise chunks in the middle. So the characters were pre-built, everything that I had was pre-built and ready, and stuff like that. I then had a lot of time where I think there was about a year or two, maybe even longer, where I just go, yeah, this character shows up. I think I've gotten pretty much everything that I need to, know about them. And then Alex or Sam or Bill or Kane or Graham or Alfie or Jack or Kane or freaking anyone who was in my games at the time would ask a question in game. Like, their character would ask a question, and I'd suddenly be like, damn, I didn't actually think of that. Like, and so like I now have to think of all these things. So I write down a huge chunk of lore that I'm like, here is this whole thing. I do improvise a lot of my stuff on the spot, but there are certain things where I'm like, I don't want to be caught with my pants down with this. So I come up with a reason for this particular thing, and reasons behind this reason, and reasons behind this reason, and lore, all netting it together. Because that's really important. And the other thing was damage output and damage resistance. Because sometimes I'd accidentally make a character a little too OP or a little too underpowered. And it'd be like, man, this guy's not hitting us that hard. I'm like, oh, shoot, he's actually supposed to be doing a whole nother D10 on top of his damage. And so...
I suppose that is another thing about my style, is that I don't really... As Alex said, my style is very easygoing. I don't really try to present that much of a challenge to them, so to speak.
Obviously, that's not the point of your campaign, obviously.
I quite recently did a Vampire the Masquerade game, 5A, which I thought was going to be a challenge. It was just the two of them. It was meant to be 3 or 4 people. But... They very chaotically found ways around everything. I just kind of like, oh, that makes sense. That'll work. You dement this man. He goes into just because one of the characters had this power that more or less made humans have psychotic episodes, or like they like psychotically break. I was even told,
was that coin?
Yes. No, that is a power in the game. It's called like
Demention. No, but like it was just
Dementation.
It was just that thing of like, I knew it was going to be Coin. I knew it was going to be Coin who had that power.
The thing is, though, is that I could have decided how he had a psychotic break. I decided to go with what the player wanted rather than, he just freezes up. He just goes into a coma.
To be fair,
he does just go. He does just believe everyone's a vampire now and begins shooting them point blank.
To be fair, though, that's not exactly anything too alien to myself either. I mean, every now and again, when I feel like it's perfect to open it up to what exactly a player wants to do, I will just say, look, you can do it however you want. I mean, there have been moments where like someone has basically. I obviously do the stereotypical thing that Matthew Mercer has started pretty much, was how do you want to do this, which is the the tagline that he says when someone is pretty much like guaranteed to kill or defeat an opponent, and it's like, how do you want to do this, how do you want to finish them off. I use that. I also use that a lot of the time with if someone wants to manipulate a certain ability. If the rules have stated that like it can't be manipulated, or even it's so good that it shouldn't be manipulated in a specific way, then obviously I'm like kind of like you kind of pushing it a bit much. But like obviously it really depends on the situation. Like I feel like I've been incredibly lenient with a lot of the abilities that you guys have made over the span of the tourney.
I always think that. Yeah, I've always think that you're but you are fair. I've never felt that. I mean, there've been like a few times when you have said no to me, and no to other abilities as well. I've never felt that it's like
unjustified.
I've never felt that it's I've never felt it's unjustified one way or the other. So I think, well, I mean, that's my opinion on it anyway. It might be just because of my power set, but I felt that, everything's been kind of, I think, fair on all the players at least.
Yeah.
I don't think you've been too lenient.
I have to say, now that you mentioned Matthew Mercer, I've just kind of realized the archetype that me and you have chosen for our kind of DMing style is that I've gone for the Johnny Chiodini archetype of DMing.
Oh, okay.
I'm the one who does the Ox Venturing group.
Yeah.
You've gone for the Matthew Mercer, which is a lot more. He does stat a lot of things. He does do a lot of things with the what's the word? The game, not dynamics, the game system.
Mechanics.
He has created a lot of things for the game, like the game mechanics.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things. Like if you say I want to do a backflip onto the roof and then hit someone with my shield. What would you roll for that? Well, that's just Dex acrobatics, 1 check. Do that. Just get a 15. Johnny would say. I suppose maybe that's where I've got my inspiration for DMing from. Just him, I guess, or them. Them.
I think it also doesn't help that like I'm not only the DM for your games, but I'm also the creator of this system. So like I'm a lot harder on the rules and the mechanics than probably anyone else that you'll meet, because I'm like, look, I need to test this system, and if you're just gonna make stuff up and ignore the rules, then you might as well not be playing this particular variant of the game. If not this game at all, you might be playing another game because you're using someone else's different rules in this system that has its own rules. So obviously, I base it off that concept a lot for my DMing as well. I also try to be a lot more fair. Like don't get me wrong, a lot of the opponents that you've most recently fought have been way beyond the normal level of fighter, but at the same time, I have used roughly the same amount of levels that most of you have had, maybe give or take about 10 levels above that. I mean, in this game, that's nothing. 2 milestones above you guys is really nothing, when you think about it. Especially considering most of you are actually getting to the point of which you're pretty much like maxing out most of the original stuff that you have. I mean, Rakia now has isn't it like 16 milestones or something like that?
It's 16 milestones. Yeah, that's
ridiculous.
yeah. I know it's insane. I love it.
80 levels. That's 80 levels. Just to put that into perspective, that is 80 levels in this game. Like, I will say something. I can always go higher. Yeah,
and we're gonna go higher.
And to stomp on everyone's like weird like conceptions about this game. This game is a power gaming system mixed with a lot of roleplay. So I might create a campaign that is purely like, hey, I'm just going to get everyone in power gamey, anime, fight magic, or even Marvel and DC this bullshit. Heavy rules, but at some point you can basically make a character that has 100 levels and is basically ridiculously OP. But at the same time, because a lot of the mechanics also base themselves off a lot of different concepts to do with roleplay, like, for instance, the power discovery system, the trades and proficiency system, the backstory stuff, the personality stuff for likes, dislikes, fears, obsessions, vice, and virtue, that creates the actual character's personality, all that sort of stuff. The willpower stat not only being to do with stuff for and against different character moments, but also being used for personality situations, all that kind of good stuff. I mean, there's at least 3 powers that are also very heavy to do with actual in-game roleplay, such as Felix's ability of emotional empowerment, because you have to choose an actual emotion that your character gains power from, and he chose calmness. He chose to be calm, to calm himself down from any emotion. So it was a sort of like nerve, is like nerves of steel sort of thing. So I mean, you know, having that we have that means that then, like, we have all the tools to have it where you can be super into the rules, super power gamey, super strategy, super roleplay, and either way it just works with anything that you want. Now, as Sam, you and I have already discussed this. If I wanted to play in your current campaign, which obviously I wouldn't, but you know, due to the fact that I don't want to crash your game, but like, you know, if I were to have started playing your game, like, you know, alongside the others, I mean, you already said, like, yeah, you could end up playing like a character who's super OP, but other than just ruling it over a bunch of mortals, there's not really much else that you do. Like, there's no real big combat situation, so you'd have to.
At the moment, the whole kind of my game is everyone's just humans and use are gods.
Yeah,
use are gods among men,
and that's
kind of.
That's the same thing with what Bill's doing with his campaign, because his campaign is based on the concept of, like, supernatural and stuff. Bill's archetype is definitely puzzle maker. Even when he's got a lot of combat, he's definitely a puzzler. Like, he will create puzzles, and it's like, how do you solve it? Even if it is in the form of combat. And he will create way better things than I can ever do. But Bill is very power gamey with that.
I would actually say, I wouldn't say he's a puzzler. I would say he's more of an architect myself, because the one thing he's really, really good at, like, because, yeah, he does occasionally do quite a few puzzles, but the thing that really stands out to me about his DM style and about his personality in general is that he can absolutely intricately build, you know, a situation. He can build monsters in the most intricate and finicky ways possible. He's like a watchmaker for characters. You know, he just does every, you know, he thinks of every little detail.
Sam, can we get that for the Alex quote book, please? Bill's like a watchmaker. I love that. It's
true. Why are you booing? I'm right.
No, I'm not booing you.
Bill's not in that, so and let's be honest, not even that funny, regrettably.
Dude.
I reckon he would find that very funny. I reckon he would.
Yeah. Well, you can tell him that. I mean, he'll listen to this episode, but yeah, it's just, I do find that, and I'd like he occasionally I do think that he does improvise quite a bit, but he has this huge foundation anyway in which he's built. Like, I haven't seen like his notes or anything, but from what I've experienced playing it, I do feel that either he is a really good improviser and he can do really intricate improvisations, or he has laid the groundwork so well, you know, for all of his creations that, you know, every improvisation fits with it. You know, that's what I think it is. You know, correct me if I am wrong. If he finds this hilarious and it's like, no, I made that shit up entirely. I
actually don't know, because I've never seen his notes, but I genuinely am under the. I mean, for instance, like when we were first doing the M. Jannar Linear campaign for the first ever time, a desert country, he literally sat down and drew out the entire continent himself. And it was like, okay,
see, this is what I mean.
the towns,
this is what I mean.
here's the cities, here's what this town is called. We have a whole other currency called MGs. You got E's, M's, and G's. All of them are based on, like, you know, similar to the concept of copper, silver, gold. You know, and they're all worth 100 of each other, and so on and so forth. I was like, what the hell? Like, this is so intricate. This is brilliant. And he can do that stuff so well. I mean, like, for instance, like the campaign that we're doing at the moment is based on supernatural sort of like creatures from all sorts of different folklore. He legitimately will look up the folklore of this particular creature that he finds interest in, write down a bunch of stuff, and because he's the one who created the new creature system, he then knows how he should make the monster in the game and what their threat level, power capabilities, and ability counts, as well as downsides and weaknesses should be. Like, even if he hasn't got everything sorted out, he's got enough sorted out to the point of which it's like, it's got layers.
Then there's me with my Kumans instead of the Romans.
I mean, look, dude, I named the top two heroes in my entire game. I named the top two heroes Solus Sol, which means in Latin "sun the sun." He's a fire mimic, who'd have guessed, and Viribus, who is the strength hero, which, spoiler alert, Viribus is Latin for strength. That I didn't really think too hard. Also, you find out later that both of their names, his hero name being Daybreak, which, again, spoiler alert, he's a fire mimic who has powers of the sun, and Viribus's actual real name is John Imperium, which Imperium is also another word for strength or strong.
I mean, this is like the Stan Lee level of name creation. It's really like, oh yeah, Peter Parker. He's a man spider. No, Spider Man. That's right. Yeah, he has spider powers, and he's Spidey's.
I mean,
if we were doing that, it'd be like Peter Arachnicon, like Arachnicon.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, because to be
fair,
I
like that.
I feel like the names are allowed to be on the nose. I feel like that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, but they're actual
What
real
a coincidence.
names. I mean, like, on the bright side, that kind of stuff isn't that bad in DC or Marvel that often. Not that they don't.
Oh no, it's part of the furniture. I really think it's part of the furniture, and I can't really I can't really say it because literally when I was just making sounds to make up Rakia's name, and I was like, okay, Rakia. There we go. Done. Finished.
I just wanted my name to be ABC. I just really like.
Oh my gosh! It's taken me this long to realize.
I really like the name Adrian from Ace Attorney.
The funny thing is,
I kept saying Adrian Andrews in my head for a long time, and then I looked up C names, and I remembered. Oh, Crawford! That's the name of one of the Hulk's enemies. That's a good name.
It doesn't help that we've had two Adrians before, because we've had we've now had your Adrian, but we also had Adrian Bright prior to this, which was one of Alfie's characters, who is part of like a genuine like canonical family, the Bright family. So that was like, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. But then when it was like Adrian B. Crawford, I'm always trying not to say Adrian Bright.
Whereas I'm always trying to make sure not to say Adrian Andrews.
It's fair enough. But I guess we should probably get into the archetypes of characters. Especially
other than our personalities.
Especially the ones that we currently have in the game so far. We've already talked about Adrian being sort of a paladin. We sort of had a very large argument about the concept of whether or not they are or aren't a paragon. I think to be honest, like the main archetype that you could see is obviously the knightly archetype. At the very least, the gentleman knight archetype / the well-mannered knightly archetype.
Regal. It's regality. Yes. Is what I've always think. Yeah.
Coming from a civilized age.
Absolutely. Civilized knight archetype. As you said, regal. I also quite like that. I especially agree with that to the extent of the way that they look in their paladin mode more than anything else. But what I was going to say was Rakia's archetype. I'd like to actually ask you guys what you think Rakia's archetype is, because I'm kind of stumped.
Yeah, I am a little bit too. She's like her own sort of thing. I mean, she's evolved over time. I mean, it's a bit because I can explain her, but I don't think she has a specific archetype. At least not in the beginning, she didn't. But I think if you're going to distill her, I guess she is like a typical monster girl. Like she has all of these features of being very feminine, very sort of calm, even like just trying to be like a regular, woman, but is quite obviously a monster. Like has monstrous features and very unladylike things like long limbs, pallid expression, would be mistaken for a cryptid in any other situation. And there's a few, archetypes for that that you see in media, but not as often, not outside of anime usually. Of course, I could be entirely wrong. People, tell me if there are any other Monster Girl, archetypes.
I feel like you're more talking about tropes and stereotypes.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think, Sam?
Part of me, I kind of view it. I kind of think there's two things I want to say for Rakia's archetype is like the original idea you had for them, which was like a swamp hag.
Yeah, oh yeah, swamp hag, yeah.
But the one I now kind of think of is this might seem weird, but like alien from outer space, E.T.
Oh,
They're naive, but they're also kind of greedy, and they don't understand the world around them.
there is a specific trope. It's the Born Yesterday alien trope, I think it's called, where it's like there's a lot of movies where like a being
Sort of similar
often,
similar
just
to
comes down,
Vision.
yeah.
Sort of similar to Vision, where it's like he's
yeah.
hyper intelligent, but he was literally born yesterday.
Exactly. That's perfect. That's perfect.
It does remind me of something.
For that.
It does remind me of something that is actually currently just happening right now in because Siobhan and I'm rewatching it myself. But, we're watching it together for the first time for her. The series Supernatural, and there is a character that is literally born, but they're born with a completely adult body, due to the fact that like they have like some celestial power. And they sense that to be able to have some way of being able to protect themselves, and also to make sure that the people who are protecting them are not left vulnerable, they are given a fully grown body. And they do have a lot of like capability of speaking English, and they have intelligence. They even have a like beyond obviously baby level intelligence, like a basic human intelligence, but there are still a lot of things that they are not fully wise to, and there's a lot of things that they don't fully know. So it is that concept of relatively hyper intelligent for the fact that they were literally just born, but to the average human they still aren't actually that much more clever. So that kind of
it's the social mores that
definitely
that stop them.
Yeah, definitely.
Like lacking in social grace.
Yes, which let's be honest, Rakia has shown many times. Which is definitely an interesting trope and archetype that you've sort of gone with that. I will say one which is also like the class. I'd say that Rakia is kind of similar to that of a D&D fighter, where they build things over time. And the reason as to why I don't believe that they're like a monk is even though they learn all these other different fighting styles, there's nothing really spiritual about it. It is more of a way of enacting greater violence or gaining greater glory. It is a means to an end, or it is a means of perfectionism. It is never to gain greater heights on a spiritual level. It is to kick more ass.
The way I always viewed Rakia, at least from a character perspective, was barbarian, like chaotic neutral.
Oh, and also the wilderness skills as well. Yeah. That would definitely be a thing. There's more sort of a wildness to it,
Mostly because you don't care about the laws of man or anyone around you. You care mostly about yourself and the people you like.
True.
Which is mostly what barbarians are. They kind of do. They don't really care about.
I would say that Rakia does care, but because of her ignorance, she doesn't really understand the implications. Like when she makes a faux pas, it then becomes sort of like, oh no, I will never do that again. Whereas a barbarian would be like, "Oh, snarl, grr, grr, rawr."
I mean, also, like, you don't harness the power of rage to gain strength. And even if you were to, that is not your main focus. I mean, if I was to, speaking of barbarians, if I was to state a claim to an archetypal class that best suits a character in the game based on barbarian, has to be Felix. He is like an anti-barbarian, but he's still a barbarian. He gains power.
That's what I meant
through
by character, as opposed to class. Character-wise, I think Rakia is a barbarian. If we're going by like stats, like actual power set.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm also talking about like the way that they operate, because again, the reason I say why I say fighter is because that there's a lot of different things that Rakia quickly picks up to have a very wide multiplicity of her style of combat, and she often, deny me if I'm wrong here, Alex, but Rakia does use her intelligence and wisdom to further expand her capacity for combat.
Oh, absolutely.
In more ways
you're
than
on the right there.
just raw power. I mean, theoretically, if you had stretched more further into the concept of going into that concept of, sheer rage and willpower stuff, where it's like, oh, I'm not rolling intelligence for this, I'm not rolling wisdom for this, I'm just straight up attacking whatever I can, and I'm gaining like damage resistances or damage buffs or something. I feel like that would be more barbarianish, and and also, like, I'm not even talking about mechanics here, I'm also talking about characteristics. Rakia does freak out at things, but that's more down to her backstory and her the way that she is. But ultimately, as the person that she wants to perceive herself as, she does more perceive herself as a fighter. Because, let's be honest, if Rakia could get herself some cool clothing that also protects herself, she would. If she got stuff that would theoretically potentially slow her down, but make her have cooler stuff to fight with, she probably would also do that as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's another thing as well, because, well, the way I described her initially, I don't know if I've said it on the podcast before, it's like, Rakia is smart enough to realize that, she's not like other girls, that she is really odd and strange, but she's not smart enough to realize that she can't fool people. Like, if she thinks that, if I get like, if I wear this special dress, people will like me more. Oh, this gives me this sword, this fighting style, will make me more respected, so I'll get that. It's just a case of like doing the right thing or having the right thing. Let's do it. And of course, that's not how it works at all. And everyone knows, what Rakia is. Like, she's just so obvious and can't hide it, but she thinks that she's doing it. She thinks that she's fooling them. But that's going to come home to roost eventually.
Yeah, no, fair enough. No,
Yeah.
I can get behind that.
So I would say that's definitely definitely more fighter than barbarian, because I don't think the barbarians would necessarily really care, to be perfectly frank, about those airs and graces.
Even if they did, it also doesn't fit with the path that she's gone with. Because although that emotion has taken over her in some way, shape, and form, it's never really been the fuel for her fight. Her wants, needs, and desires, her vices have definitely been that. But you could say that about almost everyone in the entire gang so far. I mean, does that mean that Adrian's a barbarian class archetype because that one time that they found the person that they wanted to kill more than anything else and used their rage to further fuel their combat?
You'll find that's Divine Smite.
Not even in a single smidgen, like, at all. If we're having that argument, that's my point. I mean, I also would not state that that's Divine Smite, because at no point did it ever feel like a divine power was giving you a grander power boost, because let's be honest, you pretty much stated that this is something at one point that you could do, so it's like, okay. I mean, I still would argue I still would argue though that like Felix is also the closest thing to a barbarian as well, because he does base himself off a lot of emotion and even manipulating the opposite of the emotional spectrum to keep himself calm. And he does during his quote unquote empowerment mode, whether it be rage or happiness or sadness or calmness. Which his calmness, it's still that thing of he has a great power that when he activates it, it gives him this boost of resistance and output and strength and speed and constitution, and he's just overall a better, stronger fighter. However, the issue is if he cannot control it, he can sometimes accidentally lash out at the closest thing to him. So obviously that's that's a bit of a scary thing. I was going to ask the archetype of Fletcher, because I think rogue, and hear me out. Tragic backstory, which was more sort of leaning into the stereotype, but then having it that he and this is actually more based on the actual like definition of rogue itself. He doesn't really have an actual true one master until he met Rakia, and he's been around for like 36 years, and he hasn't had a master until now. Prior to that, he has been on his own. He's been nomadic. He's learnt a lot of abilities and skills that don't necessarily base themselves in combat too much until the last end of the tournaments, sort of like big situations. All the way up until now, he's started making more combative-based abilities rather than techniques that are, making him almost like a trickster. So I would say that up until that point, he would have been classed as a rogue. I could see the argument for rogue/fighter. Or rogue/monk. I'd say fighter, but I'm not entirely sure. And this is where I wanted to get you guys' opinion on this.
I would say, yeah, it fits, but I would say that he multi-classes with monk though, as well as thief, or. Yeah, because he's got like that whole sort of semi-spiritualist sort of thing going on, where I don't think he was entirely roguish. I don't think he was an entirely roguish person. I think that, although, mind you, the most roguey thing he did was like carry all those guns with him to and stow away, on those things. So maybe I was
going to say stealing that giant ass teleporter.
Oh yeah,
using an ability to make himself invisible, like perfectly.
You know what? I think you've talked me into it. He's rogue. He is. Oh dear.
The man I've been talked into it as well. I was just thinking he's not a rogue. Like he kind of fights with some amount of but then I just realized no, he doesn't.
Like I could be put into the agreement of maybe potentially monk, maybe potentially fighter. I'd agree more with fighter and rogue than most others if it weren't for the fact that thief and rogue is there.
To be fair, there is like a rogue They use this dude. They actually use the word archetype for different types of like. There actually is like a rogue. There's like a monk archetype that is just a rogue.
Yeah,
for being a monk.
I would say, though, due to the fact that we don't know too much about Fletcher's actual personal life, I would have to say rogue, only because we don't really know if he's that monkish. But it could be a possibility. But I would say, at the very least, he is definitely a nomadic vagabond. Because obviously he goes around a lot of the time learning a few bits and pieces here, there and everywhere, but he doesn't stay in one place too long before then moving on, and he doesn't keep a master for very long. Technically, even though it's only been like less than a week of you being his. Actually, no, it's less than 3 weeks that you've been his official master, instructor, teacher, trainer, whatever you want to call it. You could still argue that that's possibly even the longest that he's had a master for. It might not be. I mean, he might have had a master a lot longer than you, but at the moment, in this current situation, based on the information that we have, theoretically, Rakia could be the longest standing one, especially if this campaign goes on for a lot longer. You could end up being a long-term trainer, rival, and potentially even partner for Fletcher. So again, like maybe getting him out of that roguish sort of style and more into the upfront fighter. Especially because I could argue that his main spiritual concept is Path of the Warrior, which honestly he embodies that better than anyone in this entire party. Because that he is all about like, I fight because I don't just fight for glory, but I fight to get stronger so that I can fight more. Fighting is glorious and all this stuff like that, and also like if someone else is truly wanting a decent fight, an honourable duel, or even just basic sparring or combat, fighting to the death, whatever it is, I enjoy it. So having that, seeing that leak out every now and again is actually kind of an interesting sort of thing for him to be, especially based on that rogue thing. As I said, I'm not 100% sold on it, but it is the most accurate to the current version that we have got of said character.
Neat fits a lot of our characters.
Yes, yeah. Last one, Cloak Ninja. Good night, everyone.
Yeah. Actually, well, yes, but also, I was thinking monk, to be honest.
Yeah.
With him. Yeah, definitely monk character.
Without a doubt.
He's very, I don't know. He's also very roguish as well because he's very much like in the shadows and like I think he's very morally upstanding. So I think he would but he has his own code,
which none of us know what it is, but we know he has.
Yeah, but that's how stealth. We know that's how stealthy he is. So he's very much roguey as well.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
He's very roguish, but I would say my argument is definitely more on him being a monk, because you could argue that it's the same kind of like concept behind why he is so secretive. But yeah, he's just a ninja. That's just legitimately it. Like he's just a ninja. I enjoy Cloak's archetype because it is just straight up secretive, stealthy, and also a little bit of like nonsense. Because like the whole ninjutsu concept, because depends on which type of ninjas that you're thinking of, but like the two biggest ones that I'm always thinking of is the ones from Naruto, because why wouldn't I? And then Ninja Gaiden, which Cloak, let's be honest, kind of embodies both of those two very well. A mixture between weeaboo fight magic and straight up just being incredibly overpowered physically. Which may be due to the weeaboo fight magic.
It's very, well, this is the thing, it's the problem, it's the mechanics leaking in, because, canonically, none of us really know what the deal is with Cloak, but we know what he's rolling for. Again, this is becoming kind of more obvious as we're going along, and Rakia's going to quiz him about the spirit punching, abilities that he apparently has known about. So, saying, did you spirit punch me once? Have you punched my spirit? Have you?
How much spirit have I got left?
Just doing a vibe check. Yeah, because this is the thing. Because I know that he did something with Pell. Because when he touched Rakia that one time and rolled for something, you see, I do, because Rakia doesn't know. Because just touched on the shoulder. And the insight was like,
nothing
touch me on the shoulder. Very nice. Nothing happened. But I'm like, I do not trust that one bit.
It's also
know-
kind of annoying because that has not come up since that happened. Regardless of whether it's actually mechanical or roleplay, that has never come up, and it bothers me. But it has not had its time yet, and potentially it may still not even have its time for a long while yet.
That's gonna be that just makes me so. That makes me worry. Yeah, that worries me a lot. Again, doesn't worry Rakia. Rakia just thinks, "Oh, we're friends. We're really good friends." But it's like, I know you rolled for that motherfucker. I know you've done something. You sneaky.
I know that obviously there's also a couple of archetypes of campaign settings, such as like high fantasy and low fantasy, sci-fi, basic concepts of like modernization or even like futuristic science fiction. I tend to try and play it a lot more sci-fi fantasy, where it's kind of similar to like the concept of like there is and can be super science fiction-y technology, but also with a twist of weird superpower magical nonsense. And yes, although that it's confirmed to not be magic, it's still seemingly magic in certain aspects. I mean, technology that specifically can only be powered by a telekinetics heat, or can only be powered by not telekinetics heat, sorry, pyrokinetics heat, or even like a person powering up energy stones using an ability to generate electricity, or even generate actual photon energy. So it's just that thing of like, like I come up with the right amount of science and the right amount of fantasy for the exact moment in time. I mean, at the moment, you guys are kind of in like samurai land at the moment. It's a sort of Edo period style thing, but they still have technology, they still have phones, they still have stuff like that, but they don't have vehicles. The biggest reason is due to the fact that they just don't need them. The second reason for it is because that like their island is theoretically too small, and they don't really want to be clogging it up. So the technology does work for other things that they have, like such as factories and stuff like that. But also, a lot of their stuff they do use powers for or medicine for. They have a lot of willpower stuff and all that kind of weird nonsense. So there is a level of mysticism. It's not mystical entirely, but there is a level of mysticism within the stuff that they do. In that particular regard. Which hopefully at some point you guys might find out a little bit more about. I mean, if you ever go to MGNR Linear, it's pretty much almost like it's post-apocalyptic. It is just desert country.
I am looking forward to Mad Max Land, to be honest. 'Cause I've already been there, in Bill's game, and I do actually like MJ London. It's probably like, honestly, it's probably, I don't know. I really like the Land of the Sunken Moon. That's the thing. So it's one of the reasons why I chose to go there in the first place for, this campaign. But I think probably MJ London is my favorite. It's got the most deadly and interesting monsters. It's got like a lot of really cool history to it. I've been there so often in your games, and I like it. It's fun. It's like Skyrim, you're going into there, it's like, I know where that tavern is.
Yeah.
This is like a well-fitted jacket.
Speaking of well-fitted jackets, you guys haven't gone to Hasconia in a while either, so I mean that would be quite interesting.
We're not going there. Never. Happening. Not happening.
For those of you who don't know, Hasconia is a winter country where most of the people who have a similar set of racial features to Rakia end up usually living. Hence why that Rakia is often profiled as a Hasconian due to the fact that she is in fact a of the race Husk, or also known as a Stalker Husk, but she is not Hasconian, because that's a country. It's kind of like if I was to say that there's a human race, and then, for instance, there is a country called Humonia, and it's like, oh, are you Humonia? And it's like, no, I'm Earthling. like, or I'm English or something like that. Like they named their country after the race, so there is a level of confusion, which doesn't help with the racial profiling for poor Rakia.
No. Oh, poor Rakia being racially profiled.
What are
racial
you?
profiling.
One of them's Huskonians? Why does everyone keep saying that?
I suppose it's like British coming from the British Isles, or for the French coming from France.
But I mean,
Just kind of
the French do come from France.
That's what I mean. Huskonians come from Huskonia.
I wouldn't say that. It's more like it's. I'll tell you what. Is the best part to explain it to. It's similar to like. It's similar to like when people say like, for instance, if someone has a darker skin tone, they would then say, oh, you're obviously from Nigeria, you're from Africa or something. I was like, no, I'm not. Like I come from Saudi Arabia, or I come from India or something like that, and they just go yeah. Oh, and it's or even the fact that you were born, raised, and lived in Northern Ireland, but you have the skin color to of someone who might have come from South Africa, and they're just like, oh yeah, you're South African. No, I was born, raised, lived, and have always been in Northern Ireland. And that's the same sort of thing that's happening to Rakia, because Rakia was born, raised, and has only ever known Glandrine, has never been to Huskonia, has never been raised in Huskonia, has never learnt the language, doesn't even know if any of her, predecessors came from Huskonia, and it's just like, oh yeah, you're from Huskonia. It's like, no, I'm not. So yeah, it's I don't know, it's kind of interesting. To have those little foibles because they don't understand due to Rakia's appearance, which I think is both kind of cute sometimes, but it's also quite dark to sort of look into that, because it's that thing of like, how much do people not know about this?
Yeah, it's like it's your stereotyping. You're stereotyping, yo.
That's no good.
You need to be getting on Facebook with all this racial profiling you're doing.
What are you, the police?
I want that moment where it's like, you wouldn't be one of those Huskonians now, would you? Rakia then turns on and goes, what are you, the police?
Yeah.
That's a serious question, because my friends are in deep trouble.
Dude,
I have so much cocaine on me at any given time.
I mean,
let's be honest. If you guys suddenly made friends with someone who was of the law enforcement, you guys would be set. I mean, not Tendra, but someone else.
Yeah, like, no, this is I think that that's when the distrust of cops was really solidified in Rakia characterizes this motherfucker. No, this is when it officially became from like a reformist to ACAB. It's like, because this bish.
I guess on that interesting note.
talking about archetypes, actually, I'd say that Tendra in this game, I think, is definitely like, I guess law woman archetype, because it's kind of like, definitely a cop character. It's like definitely like, I suppose, lawful neutral, I guess. Like, I don't think that she is lawful good, because she will she won't be like entirely like that, but it is sort of like, law's the law, and I'm going to do it, but in this competition, I'm gonna be murdering some bad guys.
I have to be honest, I think that is entirely correct. I would say that 10 would probably be he would either be lawful neutral or lawful evil, because even though that he does actually care about his children, especially Tendra, he is willing to do things heinous things if he can either get away with it or cover it up. And he does do it based on a certain amount of different rules and regulations that he sets for himself or that are set around him. But he wouldn't go out, he wouldn't wake up and go, time to murder, and then just randomly kill people or even randomly do anything specifically to destroy the world. But he does do things with that concept of like almost no remorse for the opponent if it means that he can get what he desires. So, yeah, I guess to be fair, Tendra, lawful neutral, 10, lawful evil, if we're basing them off of the alignment archetypes.
Like, from Rakia's perspective, dead to me.
Dead to me, a concern.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other archetypes that we might have seen. We've seen the
relatable princess from Adriana.
Basil exposition.
Wait, who's that one? Sorry.
That's the one that just kind of spouts plot.
I mean, that's every NPC that I have.
That's true. I do have like an archetype, that I came up with after watching. I say this to when we were like watching Silent Hill 2. When I was like back in the day, because I actually saw that in theaters, believe it or not. And I watched it, and it's like there's a character in that I have named the Exposition Witch. And it's like just literally just an old woman that just is there just to do the exposition in a very witchy manner. It's like, oh, it happened so many years ago. It all started at the mill. Which I quite like. So it's like, exposition dump, but in a witchy way.
I feel like there's a lot of characters that are very exposition-y. I feel like a lot of the time I will give you a lot of exposition, which sometimes can't be helped, and other times I do it to expand on the world, and sometimes I do it overly a bit too much, which is something that I'm trying to sort out. I would say another archetype that you've perhaps seen way too often from me, which is character who has powers that are greater than yours, and they basically lord them over like as if they are gods, and you guys are ants. Which is something that I think, Alex, you made me realise that I do a bit too much.
What did I?
I think because at one point I brought up the concept of a character as like you said, yeah, no, this is you written all over, which was an NPC that I built, and it was just like, oh yes, well, you're nowhere near as powerful as I am, and you're basically dirt beneath my feet, and I think at one point you even said it might even be just that why is it always the most powerful ones end up having some level of racism or a bigotry against the current characters that we're playing.
Oh yeah, okay, I remember now. Yeah.
I feel like
there is one character that actually looks a bit like you as well, which I knew for a fact was going to look like you, because I guess because you play them so well, and I can't not associate Smithy, without you really. So right. Smithy, we got art for that, and I can't, I couldn't unsee it, and I was like, yeah, it looks a bit like you, and I'm like, yeah, of course it looks like Joe, because it is Joe in a sense.
I've made quite a few characters that have a bit too much of me in them, and then I try to make characters that can start doing some stuff that is a bit more, varied. I feel like the two characters that I actually like a bit too much are the characters that have a lot of knowledge, and even if they don't get to expel all of this knowledge right out into the open all the time and expose too much of the world all at one go, I still like those characters that just have a little bit of possibility. For instance, if it's Smithy, he has a lot of knowledge on powers. If it's Jimmy Grum, he has he's an incredibly great smith. He can build amazing weapons, and he has a lot of knowledge about the world and stuff like that. Especially with the most recent character, Gregory Orochi, having that whole thing of him just being like, he is a know-it-all because that he has a massive family that is just a networking all the time, gathering information, and has a large hold over a decent portion of the northern region of the land. And so he prides himself on gathering information on anything and anyone that he can. I don't know. Those are some archetypes that I seem to go towards. A lot of tropes that I'll also go towards as well.
That ain't a bad thing, to be honest, because it's like, it's best to play what you know, I think, as well. And you do have a wheelhouse, and I think you do the wheelhouse very well.
Oh, thank you.
So yeah. Same with Sam as well. Sam is building his own wheelhouse.
Wheelhouse of just really cute people.
Yes, I mean, mostly, yeah.
So far, I've only been racist against people that aren't the main characters, weirdly enough.
Yeah, I mean...
yeah, fair enough.
Well, no one would dare, to be honest, because we could just mince them in an instant, so...
I think the really...
It's hard to be racist against someone that could destroy you in a microsecond.
I think the really weird thing that I've been doing a lot of the time is basically been having a lot of characters show... I don't know, maybe it's because I don't know if you guys noticed that a lot of the characters that actually do have a very great deal of racism, it is either characters that are very powerful, or they're characters that I am very much obviously putting them in your target sites so that they are easy pickings. Like, it's never just like, oh, this entire area is just full of racists and bigots who can band together and be somewhat of a threat when they pile up. No, it's usually just the one loner who, or even like a couple of them that are pretty weak, or just one stupidly overpowered one. I think it's mostly because I like the idea of that thing of like, hey, here's something that could be an issue. I'm gonna poke you with this stick and see if you bite me. Which, to be fair, like, I've got a couple of other methods that I'm going to be testing out very soon on exactly how I can get your characters to react in certain ways. Because I think something that's very important is that, like, it needs to come out a lot more organically. But even if it seems ridiculous, it's this thing of like, I use it once, throw it away. Use it once, throw it away. Because obviously the campaign that you guys are currently set in the tournament, in the Crucible of Avarice campaign, you guys have a lot of the time, like, fights will be contrived like a fighting game, and that's kind of what I've gone for with quite a few different fights. It's just like, oh, here's a random contrived reason as to why that this character is now suddenly wanting to fight you. So especially because you are literally in the land where they are a warrior culture, so it's going to be even more so like that, where it's like, why are we doing this? Because I want to see what it's like to fight you. Okay. Just sitting there, eyes open, like, I guess we're doing this.
There will be reasons. There will be consequences.
I also noticed, like, one particular archetype that you guys often have, which is it's more of a stereotype, I guess, to be fair, but it's that whole concept of, like, actions will never meet consequences, right?
It's like, we're gods. What do we like? We actually do. Actually, what the one thing, it's not even a stereotype, it's just that it's like, sort of be careful what you wish for. It's sort of like willing things to. This even happened in Sam's session as well, where it's like, Sam will say something like, well, as long as you don't get a nat 1, it'll be fine. And then immediately we get a nat 1.
One happen.
It happens. I mean, well, look at the situation that happened most recently with Adrian and Simakael. Natural 20 right as the last hit struck. It's just sod's law.
Or like even just like it is just sort of like, what's the word when you just sort of will something into existence with like the irony? What's the most ironic consequence? From it. That's sort of like that happens a lot. That happens a lot with us. Like as long as you don't get a nat 1.
Hey, wouldn't it be funny if I just got a natural 1? Yeah, no, it would be funny. It would also be really terrible, so don't roll a natural 1.
Yeah.
I feel like the weirdest one for me is that like the luck that you guys happen to also get. Obviously, it molds the story because it's a tabletop RPG based around dice rolls. But the weirdest thing to me is just how insane. It's just how insane it would be at any point, at any given moment, to to have this horrible situation happen, and then it happens. But the most recent one is the fight against Suzaku, where you hit him, don't get to pull off anything, and then Bill just like goes, yeah, okay, Cloak just nullifies his powers, hits him, and now that's it. The rest of the fight is pretty much over. And even if it wasn't, like, all my rolls were terrible anyway, like downright like guttering. Meanwhile, everyone was getting like either crits or like so damn high it might as well have been crits. Which it was just fantastic. It was just very, very brilliant, and it did definitely show me who's boss, because in the exact last session I was saying to Sam, yeah, but the dice rolls do decide fate a lot of the time, but the difference, differences make such a big deal, but sort of like very, very arrogantly saying this kind of stuff, and then it's like the fight's over, all this kind of stuff ends up being the way that it is, and now I get it, where it's like, oh yeah, this guy's one of the top 4, and it's a sparring match, and he just,
to be honest,
gets mopped.
In this game, technically speaking, there's a chance we could beat like One Punch Man if he just rolled really terribly that day.
Oh, absolutely.
That's dice. That's the way the dice roll. Some days you'll be able to beat the unbeatable man.
Sometimes, even with a natural 20, you won't beat them. But thankfully, this is not a character that had any ability to resist what you could throw at him, even with his powers being active, which they weren't. But yeah, there are certain situations like, I am the undefeated, and then it's just like, yeah, hang on a second, slightly graze his chin with my knuckle, and he just falls over.
Flops over dead.
That was pretty cool, to be fair. And it just, I don't know. I guess like that's the thing with the way that the game works with like luck and base stuff. Sometimes archetypes go out the window a little bit. Like sometimes our best laid plans and stuff, because it's sort of like, oops. I don't know. I do think it was all still very in character, because like Rakia just like going overboard and like doing the intercale, and they go, oh no. Sorry.
It does make sense though, because it's the first proper fight you've been in such a long time, and it's like those instincts kicking back in.
And he did say, "Don't hold back."
No, he did. So no, he absolutely did, and I love that. Like everyone took that to heart during that fight, and that was such a brilliant moment. I will say one thing, which is that like you'll find out later on, but there's a legend of a character, one of the Divine Guardians, who is literally just got like a ton of different legends behind him. Like his back has never touched the ground. He always wears his armor unless if he bathes. He even sleeps in his armor. He's never been defeated. His body has never been scarred by battle or by any accident. He is considered to be the undefeatable, all this kind of stuff. And I'm building this up because either he will live up to that, or it would be just so perfect if you guys fight this character and you bring him down, and it's just that moment of like, yeah, take that, legends, because it'd just be such an amazing moment of like, see, the party truly are ultimate frickin' warrior gods at this point. Like they're getting up to that point where they're defeating the legendary and becoming the legends themselves.
I am gonna do one thing though. If Rakia hears of the bath thing, you know, the bath legends say he only takes off during the bath. Say like, so we wait until he has a bath, or we get him really dirty.
I quite love about that.
What's that?
And we fight him in the nude.
My game, the few combats that have done, they've absolutely wiped the floor on it. The thing they always suck at is actually knowing things.
Oh yeah, that is you know, we are our own worst enemies because we our dump stats in this game was both of us was intelligence.
I mean, if it weren't for Rakia, I would also have the same problem.
Yeah, everybody dum-dums.
And my guys, my PCs are dumb as rocks. they don't know what anything is.
We didn't go to school. Why do you think we're robbing a museum? We didn't have an education.
If it wasn't for one thing, if it wasn't for like Kane saying, "I make sure to read up on Kumons," you would not know anything about the past.
That is true, and it's good. Whereas, you know, me in character as well was like, I don't care about this nerd stuff. I'm here to
nerd,
freaking nerd. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's not like we're ever going to need this information. Gets transported into the past where we need this information. Damn it!
I mean, I think that's perfect though when stuff like that lines up. I mean, like obviously Raki has also been buying a lot of books as well, so that also works into the sort of stuff of like, you know, I mean, we literally saw it like, oh, I'll just take out my Huskonian translation book, or even having that moment of like, you know, the situation of, oh, maybe some of the other books could help me throughout the rest of the campaign. I will buy more later on, so that then I have more information that I could go through and have more information on the world. I think you also have that like huge ass bestiary as well, which is going to be interesting.
Oh yeah, and a great big thing. Actually, yeah, didn't actually think of that, but I think that will come into play next session because I have this like book on like the most powerful beings, you know, in legend and reality and stuff, and I'm sure that there's like, you know, something in there that we could use.
I can't remember what was the name of the actual book. Can you remember the name of it?
Have a look actually. I have it written down here. So we got Huskonian history.
Yeah.
The rebuilding of Iris City, the world's strongest people.
That's it.
Huskonian language for dummies. A book on the land of the sunken moon. The bestiary of the past 500 years.
That's it.
And legendary weapons of the last 100 years. Oh yeah, also I've got Gun Lovers magazine and Top Tips on Survival by Greg Wolfe.
Greg Wolfe, yes. I do love that. I do absolutely adore that. Yeah, at some point you'll have to obviously remind me as to what one you'll read at the time, so that then I can remember some of the notes that I have on it. Because some of them I do have notes, others I'm like, as long as I remember the name of the title, I can improv some stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I've already given like Adrian my architecture magazine. Well, actually, technically, that was Fletcher's idea to give that to Adrian.
That was. I think that was quite interesting, and it might play into something that happens next session, which is coming up very soon. Ooh,
mysterious.
Interesting. Well, I think we've come to the end of this episode today. This has been interesting. I mean, we did go on and off of topic every now and again, but I feel like we've spoken quite a bit about archetypes and where we've seen them in the games that we've shown on stream so far, as well as played off stream. Any last regarding notes before I finish this off?
Well, I guess like sort of like advice, I guess, as a player character. This is the thing. I've never actually DM'd. I'm like the only person on this podcast that hasn't DM'd anything ever.
Oh shit!
Because it's very scary.
Sam, Bill, Kane, myself, yeah. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Literally everyone. Like, even Alfie when he used to do these podcasts, like he also DM'd. Oh my gosh, yeah.
I'm not sure about Juice. I don't know if Juice has DM'd anything. Probably.
I
probably.
don't
but
know
I don't
if he has. That's a
Juice
good
is
question.
pretty amazing at everything he does.
That is true. I mean, yeah,
No,
he'll
they-
excel at
Everything
everything.
they do.
That is not
Juice
correct.
Is they, right?
Any.
Oh, any all, yeah.
Any
And
all,
they're
but
like
yeah.
amazing.
Juice
But it's
they.
just see they well Juice is like excels at everything, including pronouns. So
Yes.
Juice has transcended all.
Juice, let's just say Juice is. That is all.
indeed,
No, absolutely. What a way to end this. If you want to be the best archetype of all, be a Juice, because Juice is. Thank you very much for everyone who is listening. If you want to have any look at or listen to any more of the content that we have on the channel, check out Animite Tales. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful night.
See you in the future.
And of course, ciao ciao for now.